Hi guys, it's Chala and welcome back. Today is another video for Scrap and Stamp Canada. I'm going to be using this Hero Arts color layering Hummingbird set with some great directions on the back to follow, so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is create some masks for the little hibiscus flowers, as I want to be layering some together on the edges of the card. So I'm just using a full sheet of the Avery label sheets. You can also use Gina K Masking Magic, which is also awesome. And I'm just stamping them out with my Versa Claire Nocturne Black ink and fussy cutting them out with my Cutter Bee scissors. So I'm going to go ahead and get those all cut out. I'm just using 3 of them. I think that should be enough, but if you might need to, you might have to stamp some more depending on how many different layers you are doing. I've got those cut out as well as done my little planning sheet. I like to plan everything out on a separate piece of scratch paper just so I know where I'm going with my card. I'm using my 120 pound cardstock that I like from Amazon, and I'll link everything that I use down below and over at the blog. So I'm going to start out by stamping the little hibiscus flowers. I've got my Stamp Perfect here. This is really important for the layering aspect. You don't have to use it, you can use an acrylic block, which I'll also be using as well, but the Stamp Perfect does kind of make it sometimes easier. So just going ahead and lining that up, I'm using my VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink again, as it does a beautiful job for the first impression. And using my little craft pick here to go ahead and release the backing of the label sheet. So just applying that mask right over top of that flower that I stamped down, and I'm cleaning off my stamp in between just so that when I lay it down over top I don't get any ink smudges. And using these masks help you just to get that different layers. So whatever you want to be looking in the foreground or be in front, you want to stamp first. Alright, so simply just going ahead and adding those little masks right over top of those flowers and getting the images stamped down. Okay, just stamping the last flower here, and then I can go ahead and remove all the little masks that I've placed over top. I noticed that I had some inky fingers and I ended up getting an ink smudge on my card panel. That's okay, I can show you how we're going to fix that. I am pulling out my Couture Creations detailing tool and going ahead and erasing that little ink smudge. If you don't have one of these, you can go ahead and use a mono sanding eraser, and I'll show you that as well. Just a little mono sanding eraser does the trick as well. Giving it a little scrub, and then that little blemish will disappear. Once I have that blemish out of the way, I can go ahead and use my little hummingbird stamp here and place it in the middle. Again, using the Stamp Perfect just in case I have to stamp it more than once to get a good impression. These are brand new stamps, so sometimes you need to kind of condition your stamp a little bit to get a good image, but with this Versa Claire Nocturne ink, it seems to work perfectly, so that was good. Alright, moving on, we're going to now go ahead and get our sentiment stamped on, and I'm going to be using the Happy Birthday to You. So this first card I'm making, I want to keep really simple. I decided I wanted to go with a black and white theme for this. So I'm actually not going to add any color to it at all. I've pulled out my Favorite Things wonky stitch die frame here, and I'm going to go ahead and run that through my Gemini Junior. What I like to do is use some purple tape to just kind of hold this frame in place when I'm running it through my Gemini Junior. That way it doesn't move on me and wreck my card panel. So again, I'll link the tapes and everything that I use down below, and you can go ahead and check those out over at Scrap and Stamp. So just go ahead and put this together in my Gemini Junior sandwich and run that through, and it comes out perfectly. Okay, so once I get this panel removed, I'm just going to add it to my card base on top of some black cardstock just to frame it out. Now this is the first layer of each of these images, so this is the base layer. From here, what you can do is you can leave it like this, like I'm going to do, and just keep it a really simple card, or you can also Copic color it. I'm going to be using my art glitter glue. This is fast becoming my favorite glue, just to adhere these panels down. What I like about this glue is the detailed nozzle tip, as well as the fact that it doesn't leave any of the glue beads on the other side. You can't see them through. Sometimes when you use a liquid adhesive, it leaves glue bumps on the front side. This does not do that, so that is one of my favorite things about this adhesive, as well as it's very strong. So just adhering this down, again, like I said, I'm going to keep this just a simple black and white card. I just thought that was a unique take on how to keep a really simple card, but yet it looks classic. You can go ahead and color this with your Copic markers if you like. For my next card, what I'm going to do is go ahead and step that up a bit, and I'll show you how we're going to then be using the layering effects that the stamp set has. I've gone ahead and stamped everything out again, and we're going to be using the instructions on the back of the packaging. So we want to use the next layer, and it tells you which one it is there. And this is going to be a lighter of the color you choose. I decided to go with a blue hummingbird, but you can do green like it shows on the back of the package, or whatever color you want. And I'm just lining that up with the outline image of the hummingbird and using my Stamp Perfect, adhering it to the door. And now, again, we want to use the lighter color, so I'm going to be using Broken China. Unfortunately, you can't see it there, it's a little blurry, but that is Broken China that I'm going to be using for the lighter layer of that hummingbird. I'm going to ink up that stamp again. Now, sometimes with new stamps, if they're not seasoned, you have to double stamp to get a good layer of the ink. This little item I'm using here is just from one of my son's games. There are products out there that you can purchase. If I remember, I'll try and link them down below, but this is just simply a piece from my son's game. And look at that, it's just such a beautiful layered stamp there, stamped perfectly. You can double stamp it if you want. What I find is if you use the ink and hold it down for 5 seconds, it seems to absorb into the paper better. So now we're going on to the next portion of the layering stamp here, and this is going to be the darker color of the blue, or whatever color you decide to use, and this is going to add dimension to your stamp. And once I get it lined up perfectly, I can go ahead and close the door again on my Stamp Perfect, and then I know it's going to stamp perfectly. So this is Blue Lagoon, I believe I think I use next. Again, I'll link all the colors down below. And again, ink up your stamp, and this is a brand new stamp, so sometimes you have to double stamp. This one, again, I want to make sure that I'm holding it down for about 5 seconds, letting that ink absorb into the paper. And then you'll get a beautiful detailed image. I wanted that to be just a little bit darker, so I'm going to go ahead and ink it up for a second time. Pressing it down on top, and then that gave me the look that I wanted. Moving on, we're now going to be doing the breast of the bird, or just underneath its beak, and this is going to be a pink color that I've decided to go with, and lining that up just with the edges of the outline of the original stamp that we did, and going ahead and stamping that down. Again, holding it for about 5 seconds, just letting that ink soak into the paper. And look at that, what a beautiful layering job the stamp set does. It's just amazing. And now we can go ahead and move on to our flowers. So there you see we've got the outline. Now we're going to do the first part of the stem, and that is going to be in the lighter green color. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up on my image. Now, because I have so many different stems on here, I started out using the Stamp Perfect, and then I moved to an acrylic block just because it was a little faster than having to move the stamp on the door of the platform. And bringing back my masks here just to make sure that I'm not overlapping my flowers where I don't want them to be. So I'll just go ahead and get these all stamped down and move on to the next layer of our card. Now the next one is going to be the darker green, and for that one I ended up using the forest moss for that. And just again, using my acrylic block, just continuing on with the process of stamping the next layer over top, using my masks to mask off any areas that I don't want to get stamped, And I'll just work my way around until I have all those stems stamped up. Once those are done, it's time to move on to the hibiscus flower. So we're using the most solid one, and this will be the lighter of our colors. I decided to go with reds for the hibiscus. And again, I'm going to be using my acrylic block, and this is Abandoned Coral that I'm using. Inking it up. And this is where I found it really important just to give the ink time to soak in. And then once you lift it up, it's just beautiful. It matches up perfectly with those flowers. So I'll go ahead and work my way around all these flowers, and then we can move on to the more detailed portion of this flower. Alright, so for the next portion, it's going to be a darker color. It is the barn door that I'm using. Again, using the acrylic block, it makes it really easy just to see through that and line this up. Again, it's a little faster because I have so many of these images. If I only had a few images, I would probably continue to use my stamp platform, but this seemed to go just a little bit quicker for me. Again, working my way around and letting that ink have time to soak into that paper, and it really brings out the dimension in these flowers. For the centers of the flower is one little itty bitty little stamp piece here. You want to make sure that you don't lose that little guy. I ended up using ripe persimmon, which unfortunately it was too close to the reds that I had. I should have probably used something like scattered straw. But that's okay. I stamped it down anyways and just continued on. But I think maybe a yellow might look a little bit nicer for the inside of these flowers, as that ripe persimmon was just too close to the red. It didn't seem to pop enough for me. Moving on for my sentiment, I'm going to be stamping that onto some black cardstock using my little embossing buddy here just to make sure that I get a nice clean embossing. Bringing out the Versa watermark ink, stamping that down. Again, I like to use my Stamp Perfect just in case I want to re-stamp it a couple times. Use finger pressure when you're using stamping your sentiments. If you use CPR pressure, you're going to get a smudgy sentiment. I'm using just some detailed Ranger white embossing powder, and go ahead and heat set that with my heat tool, and that'll bring out the beautiful embossing. You really want to make sure that your heat gun is hot before you bring this to your project. And I like to go to front and back as well, just to help stop the warping of the cardstock. Once that heat embossing has had time to cool off, I can go ahead and trim down that sentiment, and I'm going to add it to my card panel. I have gone ahead and ran this through my Gemini Junior with that rectangle wonky stitch die from My Favorite Things again, bringing out some 3M foam tape to pop this sentiment up. This gives it a little bit more dimension and interest to the card. The rest of the card is, again, quite simple. I really enjoyed just doing kind of a clean, simpler card. I'll remove the backing and then just line that up. I'll go ahead and frame this again with some black cardstock behind it on my A2 panel side folding card. And then just to give it a little bit of more interest in bling, I'm going to add some Wink of Stella. You can also add some sequins to this as well, or maybe some Studio Cadia drops just to give it a little bit more interest, but I like the clean look of this card. So here is the finished stepped up version of the card, a little bit of sparkle on there, and then I'll bring back in our first card, which is just the black and white, really clean and simple, using my bone folder just to smooth down the edge. Alright, and here are our finished cards. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I will link everything over at the Scrap and Stamp blog. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day. Hey guys, I would really love it if you sent me some snail mail. I'd love to receive your cards and see what you've been busy making. As well, everybody who sends me a card will get something free in the mail, and I hope to show your cards on one of my next videos. As always, you can find the materials used in today's video down below in the description and over at my blog. Any purchases made through these links helps me to bring you future content and tutorials at no extra cost to you. Another way you can show your support is simply by liking, sharing, and subscribing so as not to miss any future posts. Thanks again, until next time, P.S. I love you.